let's talk a little bit about assessments. We know that as part of a PLC, assessment is super important to us and really drives our instruction and decisions that we make in regards to what our instruction looks like and how we use our intervention time and how we report to parents on just proficiency within learning standards for students. So when we think about assessments, there are different types, and they kind of partner with each other. You can have an obtrusive formal assessment or obtrusive informal assessment or an obtrusive unobtrusive formal assessment. So really when we think about that, an obtrusive assessment is something that interrupts classroom instruction. All students take it. It's a task for everyone to complete, and it really does slow down your instructions so that you can gather that information. The opposite of that would be an unobtrusive assessment, and that's that diagnostic data that we're gathering kind of subtly and really just within the classroom environment. So we're listening to students during a rally coach, or we're listening to students during a traveling pair share, or we're chatting with the student during a writing conference. It's really that unobtrusive, quick, on-the-spot assessment that's giving us an idea of where students are within a learning progression or within the proficiency levels of a standard. Then the other side is the formal. So a formal is something that would be written or used as an intervention tool, something that would help us with our reporting to parents. It's really something that we want to make sure that all of our students are having an opportunity if need, and so the formal is definitely something that's more consistent amongst team members. Informal is also just that quick informal checkup. Everybody might do it. It could be an exit ticket, but it's really just a quick check-in on the pulse of learning and how are things going. So it's not as important that all team members are conducting this activity, but it's just for the teacher to say, all right, hey, I need to know how are my students right now within this learning progression, so I'm going to informally check on them. So some of the examples that we have are, of course, obtrusive and formal is our district CFA. We stop the learning at the end of a unit. We double check, make sure that everybody is clear on the directions and everybody has the assessment. Teams discuss this assessment before they give it. They discuss this assessment after, and it really drives instruction within even our UDIP conversations. An example of an unobtrusive and informal would just be a checklist during instruction. I'm listening to kids as they're doing a quiz trade on whether they know their letter sounds, and I'm just kind of checking off who seems to be doing okay and who might need a little bit of help during my intervention block, and give them some support. Then there's the checklist. It's a one-on-one interview. That would be obtrusive and formal. And obtrusive being that it does stop instruction because the teacher is actually sitting at the table with her students. There's no actual instruction happening because the teacher needs to press pause on her instructions so that she can do this assessment. So if you're having the student retell, or if you're having the student explain theory and science, those are those one-on-one. But those are obtrusive because it stops instruction, and it's formal because I'm using that data. And all of my teammates are using that same information to help with our instructional decisions. Another example of an unobtrusive yet formal is a written piece. So I'm having writing conferences, and I'm looking at a piece just right there, and we're just talking about topic sentence. So I'm going to grab everybody's papers in a week, and I'm going to take a peek at it, and I'm going to say, okay, how are we doing with topic sentence? Unobtrusive because kids are all working. I'm conferencing with kids. I'm still moving through the room and helping kids, but it's formal because my team has decided we're all going to grab this piece from this week, and we're going to talk about how our kids are doing on topic sentence. And then the written piece, we know that is something that we do a PBA at the end of each unit, and it's obtrusive because all students are doing it. It's timed, it's structured so that my data is consistent with my teammates, so that I've given my students the same amount of support as my teammates, and that way we can compare our data and make sure it's really reliable. This is a document that should look familiar. It used to have the little men on it, and now it has the circles, but it really is just that continuum of instruction. and just brings us through all the different pieces and parts of instruction. So we've got, our optional pre-assessments where you can gather information before a unit starts, and you can see how are students doing before you even begin instruction. And then you move ahead with your data-driven instruction. It helps you decide, where do I need to start with my students? How are they doing within this unit of study? And then I've got my formative classroom assessments. Those can be just those quick check-ins. They can be exit slips. They can be something that I've grabbed, but I'm definitely just constantly keeping my finger on the pulse of how are my students doing before I continue on with my instruction. And then moving to the right, we've got those common formative assessments, and those are data conversations that I have with my teammates, and we decide where within the learning progression are we going to check in with kids, and how are we going to consistently gather that information so that we can look and see how all of our students are doing. And I continue with my instruction from there. And then at the end of the unit, it could be a common formative assessment at the end. Not necessarily a summative assessment, because we know that we're always working towards proficiency of learning targets, but it definitely gives me an idea of how are my students doing in a particular standard at the end of my 6-week cycle, and how did the students perform in particular learning standards that we have prioritized within that unit. So just a little quick glance at assessment, all things that we've talked about in the past, but our assessment is really important to us, especially in this time that we're finding ourselves in the initial beginning of the year with remote learning. We need to be super creative with how we're gathering this assessment data, and what we're using as a team to be consistent, and when we're checking in with students in that informal opportunity, whether we use Seesaws or Schoology or a Pear Deck or Flipgrid, whatever we're using to gather that information, we want to make sure as a team that we're sharing those ideas and talking together. All right, so our next steps as we continue on through this school year. We need to work on district assessments. We worked so hard this summer on learning progressions and really making sure that we know that step one question, that oval one question, what is it that we want our students to know and be able to do? So we did such a great job of that within our learning progressions and our pacing guides. We are very clear on where our standards lie. And that oval two is how will we know? How will we know if students are showing proficiency, and where are they? So that's what the district assessments will help us. And so we need time as groups to really decide what will that look like. And then just continued learning and conversations as we get back. I know it's on the minds of many teachers. What will literacy look like remotely? What resources will we use? What does the pacing look like? So just continue conversations, and we're really excited to have some good solid time together as a team or as teams and grade levels when we get back. And then of course, we'll continue as the year flows just to keep having those conversations about literacy and high effective practice. So what you are going to be shared on today is your grade level literacy collection. This is the home page where you will find all of the documents that you need that are literacy related. So there will be yearly pacing guides on there for you, and then a cycle pacing guide. We've reverted to the word cycle, which is about 5 to 6 weeks of instruction, due to the fact that ReadyGen calls their units. We didn't want to get confused because we'll be using multiple ReadyGen units within a cycle. So we went back to the terminology cycle. For those of you who have been in the district a while, we did used to call them cycles. And so we'll have a cycle pacing guide that will be in there, and then calendars, which we have used in the past, and those calendars will be collected within this one home page. We've also created a Cycle 1 lesson plan sample, and you'll be able to access that there. You'll be able to have access to all the other grade level literacy collections, so that will be right on the same home page. And then the quick links to tabs, there'll be a link to all of the individual learning progressions, as well as all of the individual rubrics that will apply to you in your school year. And then finally, in the top right hand corner, the district assessments will be linked in there, whatever we'll be using for each cycle, each unit. There might be multiple assessments because there might be a CFA that we're going to use as a district. Most likely it's usually our end of unit cycle assessments that you'll find in there and those PBAs. But there might be a foundational skills assessment that you need to do that will be district-wide. So that's where you'll find all your district assessments. So we're really excited about this particular place because we're hoping that it's just really helpful and organized for you. And so our purpose today was to walk you through some of these pieces and parts and then just give you some time to explore. And again, we'll have that opportunity at that first week back of school. So some of this information you've heard today will of course be something you've already heard, but we love that you're such great learners and that you wanted to get a jump on this and start exploring a little bit before that first week back, because we know there's a lot of learning that goes on that first week. So again, thanks so much for taking time to work through this and look through these documents with us. And please do not hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. We're always here, happy to troubleshoot. And sometimes you look at something so many times and it's clear, and then somebody else has a fresh set of eyes and it's like, oh, wow, we didn't think about that. So we absolutely love, need, want your feedback and your questions and your wonderings. So please feel free to reach out and let us know anything that is on your mind. Have a great rest of your summer, and we will see you back next week.